yeah, it won't be too active. We will be going through some things if you want to. You don't have to do anything active. I'm just kind of going to give you information about things, and then if you want to try stuff along with me, then you can do. But don't feel like you have to do anything today. It's about more education of the movement rather than being active in this session. I'm going to use stick, a broomstick or anything like that. You don't need it. I'm just using it more as a visual aid. Then again, training with one of these can be really helpful when you're trying to improve your form or anything like that, okay? So for today, it's just a visual aid for you guys to kind of see what I'm talking about. So the four I've chosen to go over, the main fundamental exercises that you've all definitely done, being the press up, the deadlift, the squat, and the lunge. So some of them you may find super easy, some of them you may not be able to do. We'll kind of cover all bases, because you can't learn enough about these ones anyway. It's really good to just go over the basics, and even if you can do them quite well, you may find something that improves it even further. So today we're going to start with the press up. What I'm going to do is kind of go over all four, about 10 to 15 minutes each, maybe a bit longer, see how we go, but rather than delving deep into one of them. So if you want help with any particular one after, then just drop me a message. I've got some more stuff I can help you with in that sense, if there's one you really struggle with. But today I don't want to waste too much time focusing on one. We're going to spend some time on all four, okay? So we're going to start with the press up. And the way we're going to kind of go through this is kind of go through the normal mistakes that a lot of people make, and then go through the things that we should actually be focusing on in terms of correct tip and correct exercise. So the main problem that we have with the press up is where your hands go. And it's where your hands go directly affects what muscle you're going to be using in this exercise. Now, as you all know, if we're talking about a bench press looks like this, where the bar's directly above you, you bring it down and press straight up, like so. Now that is using the chest muscles, so all across here. Now if you're doing an overhead press, although there's some of the same muscles are engaged, the chest is still working, triceps are doing a lot too, but when we're doing an overhead press like so, the shoulders are doing a lot more of the workout. Now this is important because if you try to lift as heavy as you could in the bench press, and then if you try to lift as heavy as you could in the shoulder press, most likely 9 times out of 10 you're going to be able to lift more during a bench press. So your chest and pressing above you, pressing here is easier than pressing above. We need to remember that when we're doing the press up, because if we're trying to press above us by being in the wrong position, it makes it so much harder. So what we see a lot of is people getting into positions like so. We're a lot closer to a shoulder press than a bench press in this position when we're here. So trying to press like this puts all your weight on your shoulders, makes the exercise harder, and you just get way less from it. So we want to think of a press up like a bench press. So that's where they really connect. They're both chest exercises primarily. And the way we make sure we're in the right position is, first of all, getting our shoulders over our wrists. So if you were in an all-four position like so, what we should have is a dead straight line down from your shoulder all the way down to your wrist here. So that's where your press-up position should start in terms of the shoulders. What tends to happen due to fatigue or just if we struggle to have strength in the upper body, then we automatically pop up and try and compensate into positions like this, but just don't get any of the movement that we're looking for. There, all I'm really doing is a little bend of the elbows, and that's using the main muscle groups. Which is why when we go into a kneeling press up, getting that form right is really important too, because this does allow, when you're in this kneeling position, like so, it takes some of your body weight out of the equation to allow you to just go into your press, like so. So the main thing here for this corrective exercise is making sure your shoulders are directly over your wrists, like so. Now the other part of a bench press is your elbows in comparison to your shoulders. So it's easily done in a bench press too. If I show you a bench press here, if I'm here, what a lot of people do is like a bench press and the press up, we have our elbows higher or level with our shoulders. Now what this does, similar to being up here or too high, there's a lot of unnecessary pressure on the shoulder muscles like the deltoids and the traps, which again are smaller exercises and just simply not as strong as the chest muscles that we want to be using. So what we need to make sure is if this is my line for my shoulders, that our press and our elbows are coming below. So even though at the bottom of that press there, you can see my hands are level with my shoulders, if not just below, my elbows are even lower still. So if I put that into a press-up perspective, once I'm in this position, making sure my shoulders are over my hands, my elbows do not come flaring out and high up here. I allow them to come at like a diagonal motion. So using a stick like this can also always help. They should be going at diagonal like so, following that path. So that we're engaging the chest a lot more and avoiding overusing the shoulders. So that is the basics of a press up. Now the problem people have with press ups more than anything else is that they think it's an easy exercise when it's really not. If you consider, if you've ever done dumbbell bench press and stuff, then I'm not sure what weight you're using, but you may have a good idea. And if it's not very heavy, then that's fine. That's kind of shows that maybe you need to improve your upper body strength. But then expecting to do a press up when your body weight is whatever it is unrealistic, similar to the way pull-ups are very difficult. You need to remember how hard these bodyweight exercises can be. So that's why we want to make sure we're doing things right first and building up. This is not a simple exercise, it's quite advanced. But because everyone tries to do them, because they can, we need is floor, people expect to be able to do it and really struggle. So where we want to start is a very basic exercise in the kneeling press of itself. And here, where we're taking a lot of weight out of it by hinging from our knees rather than our feet, and we're not lifting nearly as much weight in this position. The thing is, when that's done right, it's still difficult, because it is still a lot of exercise, still a lot of weight. If you can't hold yourself up on your arms already, then that's where you generally want to start. But we're going to today pretend that that's somewhere where you're already at. If it's not, then drop me a message. But we're going to pretend that you can hold yourselves up, so we want to work on the technique itself. So it all comes down to a plank at the end of the day. Once you've got your shoulder position correct, make sure that plank position is correct too. Now what I mean by that is, you may have seen it, you may be the person that does it. If I tell someone to do a kneeling press up, sometimes we see this, where we're on this all four position, I press down, my bum stays right in the air, and then I push back up like so. Now my shoulders are doing the right thing. Everything I've talked about before now is correct. But the problem is, I am doing nothing in terms of pressing weight. I may as well have like really small weights there, but all my body weight is sitting back on my knees. So I could do it one-handed, but really, I'm not actually pressing anything. I'm just creating the movement, which is great for learning the movement, but in terms of building strength, it's doing nothing, okay? So what we need to make sure is our body weight is over on our hands first. And we do that by being in a plank position. So whether you're in a plank position like so, or on your forearms, there's a lot of weight on your arms as well as your feet. Same here. If I drop my hips down again into that knee down plank, there's quite a lot of weight on my arms now, same as being down here. So this is a position that we really need to become comfortable with. And the way we're getting that right or wrong is making sure that we're not hinging at the hips. Now we're going to talk a lot about hinging with the deadlift after this. But hinging from the hips is, obviously you can see here, there's like a straight line up from my thighs, and then I'm hinging at the hips, so there's a big bend here from where my torso goes. We need to get rid of that. We need to bring the hips forward and down. So now, if I tuck my hips under like a plank we want to, we're looking for a straight line from your knee to your shoulder. So that's kind of the thing we're looking for. Straight line from your knee to your shoulder. And then way more of your body weight is over on your chest. Then if you get those arms right, we're into that press like so. Now, if you want to give any of this a go, you can, but like I say, it's more about education, so you don't have to. But if you want to, you can. But the point is, we want that weight forward. Now, if you were to go away and try that, you go, okay, this is actually way more difficult than I thought. I can't manage a full press up on my knees. Now my hips are down. That's fine. That's kind of where we want to be. If you can perform those, then great. If you struggle to perform those, then it's kind of probably a good indication of why you've been struggling to improve your press up or upper body strength generally. And we start with much simpler exercises, such as the up down or the shoulder taps, where we're holding this position but building up strength. Alternatively, there's loads of ways to mimic the exact same exercise but at a higher angle. So for example, chairs and sofas at home, practicing on something like that. So exact same position, tuck my hips under, straight line from my knee to my shoulder, so all my weight's forward, and I'm pressing up and down. Now this is way easier and a much better place to start if you're looking at improving that press up. Okay? So that is the fundamentals of the press up. Does anyone have any questions about the press up? No, all good? All right, cool. So just want to make sure I've covered all the bases. If there are any things you want to question me on throughout this session, then just let me know. Like I said, we don't want to waste too much time on any of these. I want to give you a good overall of all four of them, and then if you want some more help with any of them, then please just let me know. But we'll go on to the deadlift next. Now, I consider the deadlift one of the hardest exercises to certainly teach. So it's probably one of the hardest exercises to learn because of that. But it's actually a very simple exercise that just unfortunately some people have done naturally for their whole lives and some people haven't. And that is just hinging at the hips. So like I mentioned before, the hip hinge is from our hips and we hinge forward from there. Now a lot of people you see naturally then from the hips, pick stuff up from here and have no issues whatsoever. Whereas a lot of people generally struggle with that. They tend to focus on picking stuff up with their legs, which is healthy, or picking stuff up around it back, not hinging from the hips, which again isn't going to do much damage to you in general life unless you do it way too much. But the problem is if we try and deadlift like that, we're trying to lift these big heavy weights, then we're probably going to aggravate something in our spines. So I just like to stress that. You hear all these, some trainers say, you need to pick up stuff like this, like a robot, in order to keep healthy, which isn't true. Our bodies are very strong, especially our spine, in terms of we can go around, not think about anything, picking stuff up without any worry about hurting ourselves. But when we take it into an exercise process, so if I'm trying to deadlift a heavy weight and I'm not doing it right, I'm putting pressure on my lumbar spine, which is the lower spine here, then I'm likely going to hurt myself. Like when we do anything wrong, you've got a good chance of causing yourself some issues. So with that said, learning that hip hinge is so important. Now, one of the hardest parts, well, not the hardest part, one of the parts people don't think about first is the hamstrings.
Hamstrings.
So your hamstrings are these big muscles back here. There are 3 of them on either side. I'm not going to go into details about that, but what I am going to talk about is that they are a biarticular muscle. All that means is they cross 2 joints. So I've got my knee joint here, and then I've got my hip joint here, like so. That's my hip joint. So hamstrings both cross the back of the knee and the back of the hip in the bum. What that means is if I extend my leg like so, then this part of the muscle is stretched. So the muscle here is stretching. Like a bicep, it's flexing, so it's also can be relaxed as well, rather than being stretched out. Now everyone kind of knows that, because when we go to hamstring stretches, if I do this, you can feel that stretch, okay? What you can't forget about is the other connection point, which is just below the bum, or well, it feels just below the bum, but it links up to here. And what this does, if I go for another hamstring stretch, keeping that leg straight, you can feel the stretch down here, like so. So if you have tight hamstrings or inactive glutes, which tends to lead to tight hamstrings anyway, then that's probably what's causing you to struggle with your hip. Yeah. So, for example, if I give you an example here, if I switch off the bottom of my hamstring, so now my legs are bent from here, this part of my hamstring is relaxed, whereas I can quite easily hinge without feeling much tightness in my hamstrings, like so. So I'm hinging from the hips, like there. Whereas, if I stand up and hinge, my hamstrings automatically way tighter because they're already in a more stretched position. Okay, does that make sense? So with that said, if you have super tight hamstrings, what we see a lot of people do is try and deadlift with straight legs. And we don't want that. It's possible to do, and people can do it. But if you try and lock out your legs like so, and then hinge forward, you're eventually going to run out of mobility, and you're going to start to round on the lower part of your back here. So what I refer to as is soft knees. What we need is soft knees. This takes a lot of practice, which is why reps for deadlift, weightless reps that is really beneficial. So this is locked out. So my legs aren't bending at all, and I'm struggling. My hamstrings are really tight. I'm starting to move from the lower back rather than the hips, just because I can't without moving from the lower back because my hamstrings aren't letting me. So by having soft knees, which all I mean by that is kind of bouncy knees like so they're not locked out. As I go down and hinge, my knees can bend a little further when they need to. If I feel like my hamstrings are too tight, like here, it can just bend a little bit and allow me to hinge forwards. So a lot of people forget the hamstrings and just try and bend forward and back. If you don't consider how the hamstrings feel and how low you can get whilst having a bend in the knee, you're going to struggle with that hip hinge. With that said, if we're taking the hamstrings into consideration, the next part is just learning how it actually works. I'm going to move up a little bit. So using this stick again, all I'm going to do, you can do this at home. You can place this stick against the back of your head. Use your other hand to come behind and push it against your coccyx about here. So you're holding it in position. Now, first of all, what we're looking for is we don't want to be arched. We don't want a gap here, like so. So what we want to make sure is we anterior pelvic tilt, so we're just tucking those hips under and causing a flat back against this stick, like so. I've done a lot of this tucks like a cat-cow, just having that hip control. So being able to tuck those hips, and then what we want to see when we're doing a hip hinge is we hinge from the hip. So this stick has stayed flat to my back, like so. The movements come from my hips here, and then I come back up. So that is a hip hinge where we're moving from our hip joint up and down, like so. And if you watch my legs quickly, if I try and keep them straight, I'm going to round. Whereas if I keep the legs soft, I need to bend as I get lower down. I'm able to maintain that flat back position, okay? So when a deadlift's like that, the simplest way to think of it in terms of keeping that back nice and flat. So now you can imagine this is my bar when it comes to a deadlift. A great way of doing exercises with a weightless bar, even though sometimes doing weighted deadlifts actually makes it easier. But all I'm going to do is roll the bar down my legs towards my knee, get to the top of the knee and back up. So doing this stops me from going too far and then allows me to not worry about my hamstrings too much. If I go further, then my hamstrings are going to come into play a lot more. I'm going to need to bend the knees a bit more. If I just start that movement here, back staying flat, moving forward and backwards. Once you've nailed that general movement, you can start to take past the knees. Like in a deadlift, our knees start to bend once the bar's out of the way, into that position anyway. So we don't need a Romanian deadlift where we're pretty much straight the whole way into this position here and back up. But even then, you don't need dead straight legs. You put most of the pressure on the hamstrings because they're working a lot. So the deadlift is a very complicated exercise to learn from a very simple exercise, just by getting your weight distribution and stuff like that right, and making sure the hamstrings aren't overloaded by trying to keep them too straight. Has there been any questions about the deadlift from what I've talked about already?
Don't think.
All good. So there's a few ways just to go over this. So I recommend using a stick on the back like I've used already. You can also put a stick right on your hip line. You can practice bending over it like so. So you know you're hinging from the hips when that stick's right up in that hinge. That's where you're folding over from. And a good way to learn this too is remembering the difference between a squat and a deadlift, whereas the hips are going back and forth, forward and backwards in a deadlift, whereas the hips are going up and down in a squat. And you can use a wall for that. So if I show you first, my hips are here. You can see as I deadlift, they go backwards, and as I come back up, they come forwards. If I'm in a squat, hips are here. As I go into a squat, the hips go down, and they come back up. That's a good way to realize if you get the two mixed up. So if you ever want to practice a deadlift, then use a wall. You can stand right against it, step away a little bit, and then deadlift. So your bum touches the wall, like so. And then you can take a further step out and do the same thing. Bum's touching that wall there, so you know the bum's going backwards. There's loads of little techniques you can learn. Happy to give you some more if you want to practice your deadlift more. But they're the basics of the deadlift, making sure those hamstrings aren't hindering you, and then making sure we're hinging from the right position, okay? So, talking of squats, you're going to go straight into the squats. Cover the main mistakes first, and when I say mistakes here, the main things are where the body is like tightest. So I'm going to cover the ankles first, because if you haven't trained with me before, a lot of people forget about the ankles. I talk about them all the time, but ankles are key for the squat, okay? So first of all, if I show you a squat, if your knees cannot go past your ankles, then you're not going to be able to squat into a very deep position. So if I squat now, you can see that my knee is over the toe like so. And that is a healthy position to be in when you're squatting, allowing those knees to go over the toes. So that's what we kind of want to be able to do. What we find for a number of reasons is that we can't do that because our ankles don't let us. So this is caused by having very tight calves, tight ankles down here. So first, a good way to test your ankle mobility is to use a wall, or in this case, I'm going to use a stick so you can see better. You can just imagine this as a wall, to be honest. What you do, you come up into this straight position here. Make sure this stick or the wall's touching the toes. And now I'm going to touch my knee to the stick. Now this is very easy at the moment. But the main thing I'm focusing on is this heel doesn't come up. If I'm having to lift the heel up to the stick, then it shows that I'm struggling there. So once you've kind of found that your toes touching the wall can do that, which they will be able to, I want you to shuffle away so that you're about, I don't know, a fist distance away from the wall, and then try again. Can you touch your knee to the wall without lifting that heel? If you can, then try a thumb and a fist in that thumb, and do it there. So if you start to eventually hit a point where before you get to that stick, that heel is coming up, then it's kind of suggesting that's your ankle limit at the moment. So it may be very good if you can do a thumb and a fist distance away from the wall, then it's a good indication that your ankles aren't a limiting factor for you. It's also very important to try both sides, because you will be different on both sides. They may both be very good, but one side is sure to be different from the other. And if you have one really tight side in the ankles, then you're going to struggle to get into that squat, or our squat is going to be not equal on both sides. The squat being a bilateral movement, meaning you're using both legs. It's easy to have problems with one leg and not the other, causing us to sway the hips or general cause problems in the long run, injuries and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that both sides are doing the same thing. So if your ankles are the issue, there's tons of ways to stretch them out. The main simple way is basically the same as the test I just showed you there, where you just want to keep your foot flat, you put loads of weight on this knee, pushing over, trying to get that knee as far over the toe as you can, loosen off those ankles. What you may feel is a stretch in the back here, the back of the heel. Also, you may be tight in the front. There's some parts here in the front of the ankle that can cause tightness as well. So depending on where you feel it, doesn't matter too much with this stretch as we're just trying to force that knee over. But there are different ones if you are feeling it more in the front or the back. Like I said, if you tried this, but you're still struggling with your ankles, then again, I can give you more information on that. But let's say you can check your squat quickly, and let's say your ankles maybe aren't a problem. As you can see here, my knees are quite low over my ankles, so that's not a problem there. If you find you're here, you may be kicked up so much that you can see my knees aren't over my ankles anymore, and I'm having to compensate with my position. If that's you, if you find you're in here, check the mirror and see, oh, are my knees over my toes? If they aren't, then it's a good indication that your ankles are a big problem. Now, if the ankles aren't, but you're struggling to get deep to a squat, or just squat generally, then it's most likely to be the hips. So your hip tightness is very important to your squat as well. And we get tight hips generally from inactivity more than anything else. What happens is we sit at a desk or sit around all day, or we just generally overwork the hips. Actually, overworking the hips is not very common. It's more common that we sit in a position like so, where the hips are constantly in this position, which means they're kind of active and in a kind of almost stressful position for them. Because like a bicep to work here, in order for the hips to work, they're working there. So if you're in this position all day, then the hips are in quite a stressed position. Not only that, but if we're sitting on the glutes all day and having inactive glutes, which are a big muscle group in terms of how the hips work, if we've got inactive glutes, it can lead to tight hip depending on what position we find ourselves in all day. So by having tight hips is a huge thing that limits how low we can sit into a squat. Luckily, there's tons of ways to stretch out the hips, as well as ways to engage the glutes. We're just going to go through a few today. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But there's ones like using the wall, and what we want to do is mimic the squat. So if I'm here, first of all, I'm in a squat position. my knees are level with my hips, and this is quite comfortable here. But this may be a stretch for some people who really struggle to get into this position. And then what you can do is you can move closer, so you're stressing it more, so you're in a deeper squat like so. This is a very passive stretch to start with, and a very good one. Other ones we can try the frog stretch, which if you've done the mobility sessions with me, then you know all about. It's quite an uncomfortable one, but the reason I'm showing you these ones is because it mimics that squat. There's tons of stretches you can do, but making them very applicable to an exercise can be really helpful. So if you imagine I'm coming down into a squat here, I sit back, and I'm trying to sit into that squat as if I was standing up like so, but without all the pressure of my body weight being involved. So you take your knees wide and you sit your hips down. What we don't want to do is round from the back when we do that, okay? So we sit back into this squat here, like so. Really effective stretch, both good for general mobility and the warm-up exercise for when it's
Yeah. Do I have to look at any pictures? Yeah. Well,
so,
I don't want to do that. Oh, Marcy.
so so with that said, if you struggle with the hamstrings and ankles, then let me know. Otherwise, we're going to move straight on to some of the fundamentals of learning a good squat. So if you're able to keep yourself upright and stuff, then your hips and ankles may be okay. But what we want to focus on to make sure we've got a good squat position is the tripod. So the tripod foot is something that a lot of people refer to as 3 points on your foot. So I'm going to use my shoe here so you can see. But if I've got my big toe here, and just under it, the ball of the toe is 0.1. If my little toe is here, then just under that is 0.2. And then the heel is 0.3. So that's our tripod, those 3 points there. So just under the big toe here, just under the little toe here, and just under the heel. There are 3 points. I'll continue without the shoes to emphasize this. So naturally, our feet have a slight arch on the inside. Some people have I have a big arch, some people have no arch and really flat feet. That kind of depicts what your muscles are doing. We've got tons of muscles in the feet. Mine if anything, are too big, which is just totally genetics. But some people's are really flat, but also people's are really flat or too stressed and really tight because of, again, how we live our lives, whether we use our feet a lot, whether we don't, what shoes we wear. Those are reasons, but this can directly affect our ability to squat. But focusing on the tripod position is a great way to start improving your squat position. So all you need to know for this is that all 3 points touch the floor in the squat. So you've got those 2 at the front, under the big toe, little toe, and the heel. If I show you what can go wrong first, number one, if you lose the heel, you're going to squat like this and the heel's going to come up. Now my squat looks pretty good, but I'm not keeping those feet flat. So I'm in an upright position that we want to see. What this does puts all the pressure in the knees. Our knees are taking a lot of weight controlling this squat, and eventually you're going to hurt your knees. So we want to make sure those feet are flat. Number 2 is losing that arch. This is where the little toe comes up. So if I go for a squat and my knees cave in, you sometimes see this with beginners who try and squat, knees cave in like so. You can see I'm losing those little toe connection down there. What this suggests is that we've got inactive glutes, hips, and generally we're not going to get much in terms of working as quads. Finally, the final one we can kind of see is the over-rounding and losing our big toes. This is the least common, as it's more common with people that overarch, like myself, where we're kind of losing that big toe connection like so. But it does happen in lunges and stuff where you see that knee flare out too much. But generally, our most common thing is weak glutes where our knees come in. Whether or not any of those 3 is your problem, making sure all 3 are there is really important to your squat. So what we want to do is try and grip the floor with our toes when we do this. This should emphasize not trying to claw up like so. So if I do this, I've actually got my big toe driving too much into the floor, and I have actually lost just underneath. So don't core up too much. We're going to push our toes into the floor so that our big connection point is here, and then the other two connection points are strong too. Once we've got that position and we're gripping the floor with our feet, sinking into that squat is going to naturally allow our knees to do what they want to do. Because the knees want to follow the angle depending on the part of your feet. Now, I use a cue knees over toes a lot because it's very simple, but it's not actually accurate in terms of if I went for a big sumo squat, are my knees over my toes? No, they're not. It doesn't mean my sumo squat is in the wrong position. But by having that tripod, whether I squat this way, if I squat really close, then my knees go over the toes.
Losing you. Yeah, I can't see or hear anything.
But main thing is got those three points.
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, I just sent him a message.
Yeah, I noticed that, yeah.
I wonder if he knows it's gone or whether he's carrying on. Can we message him in the group?
I've
Did
just,
anyone else have a thing come up saying that they were now the host, or was that just me?
No.
I think you're the host now. Want to carry on?
Yeah, because I know what I'm talking about. I don't know if
I'll message him in the
anyway, I can change it.
the host. Oh,
Sorry about that.
Ah, okay.
okay.
Yeah. Where did you lose me? Where did you lose me?
When you were doing the squat, you just done the Zumba squat.
Okay, cool. So not too far off then. So yeah. Yeah, whichever one we're talking about, maintaining that tripod is the most important. Does all of that make sense?
Can I ask you something? Because we've always been told that your knees shouldn't go over your toes, that you should be in a right angle.
Yeah, that is not true. It's an outdated kind of thing. It's what I learned when I became a personal trainer. It's not true. It's just
Okay. Because I wouldn't have thought that it was over bending your knee.
yeah, it's one of those things, unfortunately, that gets passed around a lot. And like, I got taught it, that you can't go over the knee, but if you actually, it's very natural to be able to squat into that knee over position. Now, they're not far over, and as soon as you lift your heels, then all the weight's in the knee. But if you've got a good weight distribution, then actually all my weight's in my hips and going through my foot. So the reason that was there is technically it's not actually true. We need to make sure that tripod is there instead. But yeah, I got that as well. Do we have any other questions about the squat?
No, just practicing it now.
That's good. Yeah, practice away. If there's no other questions, are staying on the legs for our final one then, because it's the lunge.
Oh, yeah.
Lunge is difficult in terms of different things to the squat. What we don't have to worry about is our can't say the hips and stuff. What we do need to worry about is our balance and weight distribution. So first of all, weight distribution is the most common mistake. So we'll go over the mistakes and then we'll go over the improvements we can make. So
Yes.
what I mean by weight distribution is where we're putting our movement. If we're moving a certain way, then it's putting the weight in a certain area of the body. So if I take it into a standard split squat position, we've got three common things that happen. Now we either go into a lunge and all the weight is going into that knee. You can even see my heels pushing too far forwards. Similar to the squat, this can cause a lot of knee bother. Alternatively, some people like to sit backwards in it, like so, which is a killer stretch for this hip flexor here. Absolute stretch, and a great stretch for the hip flexor is doing like a Bulgarian split squat where you're leaning backwards. Really great stretch, but it's taken away from the muscle, so we don't want to be leaning too far backwards either. Our weight should go straight up and down. So what I mean by that is, using a stick, if you watch my knee here, this one back here, it's hovering above the floor, exactly there. That knee is going to go directly down. So it just follows that pathway. So during a split squat is the easiest way to make sure you're doing this. And if you do struggle with knees, it's the safest way to do so without bothering your knee. There's no excessive weight going through this knee. And we're just going up and down like so. Now that is a split squat. Easily done in terms of not leaning too far forward. If you struggle with lunges or this generally, then I recommend starting there. The next level up would be a reverse lunge. The reason being this is the next level up is because it's easy to stress the knee if you're going for a forward lunge. So a reverse lunge helps not put the weight into that knee by stepping back. The only issue with a reverse lunge is balance. Most people don't like it as much because they lose their balance. But most people would prefer to go for a forward lunge. But as you can see, by stepping backwards, I'm less likely to put the weight into the knee. Therefore, if you're worried about your knees or have bad knees, doing a reverse lunge is probably going to be healthier for you unless you perfect the forward lunge. If I show you the forward lunge now, the problem that people most do is they drive their weight into it, their body weight's too far forward, and they put the weight all into that knee, like so. What we actually want to see is that step forward, and then it's just a split squat, straight down and back up. So step, down, and back up. So you can do this in front of a wall. If you step to a wall, imagine this is my wall, step to that wall, and then go for that lunge. If your knee is smashing into that wall, so don't go too aggressive, then you're gonna be showing yourself that you're putting too much weight forward. So even though I'm stepping forward, the step does not correlate with the movement. The movement should still be a movement downwards, like so. So we're loading this quad, the muscle that we're working, and then coming back up, rather than putting all the weight into the knee and driving too far forward. So that is the most common mistake we see with the lunge, and easily corrected by just practicing your split squat and then making sure your weight is going downwards rather than forwards. Now, although that's the most common mistake, the most thing that hinders most people is balance. And everyone, same again, because this is a unilateral exercise, meaning using opposite sides, everyone tends to have one side better than the other. You may be really comfortable on one side and really off balance on the other. So I'm going to use this stick as my midpoint. So my stick's here, like so. And I've got both feet either side of it, equal distance away from it. Now, if I step into that split squat, I'm going to go down into position. You can see if I touch my knees to the floor, my knee's kind of in line with this foot, and this knee's in line with that foot, like so. And then again, split squats is the easiest place to start because we're keeping our feet stable, so we know we're not going out of position. If I go for forward lunges, we want to be doing the same thing. So keeping an equal distance away from our midpoint. You lunge forward and then back up. The most common mistakes come.
Mm. Oops.
Gone.
Have we lost him again?
Yeah.
Like it.
I'm always wobbling doing them.
Yeah, I struggle with them. I can't get very low.
No, I get wobbly. Balance goes completely.
What was he just talking about? Sorry, I had to take a work call, so I missed the last 5 minutes.
Doing squats properly
Oh, right, okay.
and the balance.
Lunges, not squats.
I don't find problems with those. It's doing things like mountain climbers. They're hard.
They're hard, but they're not.
It hurts my back doing them.
We're almost there. We're almost there. I lost you again.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Either side of the pole.
So yeah, just to finish off this then. So yeah, using something like this to assist you is going to be really helpful in terms of that position. Like so, finding something for yourself, stick your balance is the main issue with your lunge, to practice something like that. Now, are there any other questions on the lunge?
You know, when you're doing, sorry, when you were doing reverse lunge, your knee is not touching the floor, is it? Because I think I tend to do that.
Yes, so that is part of control. So if you find your knees are touching the floor, then that is just, think of any exercise, press up or so, the lower we get into a position. So the hardest part of the squat is here. That's my weakest point. The hardest part of the press up is here. It's the exact same for a lunge. So if you find that you're getting down to that deepest part of the lunge, you kind of lose control, that is totally normal. So if you find your, like you say, your reverse lunging and your knees are hitting the floor, that is just kind of just something where you need to work on control. So all you need to do with that is whether you carry on with a reverse lunge or start with split squats, doesn't really matter because that's not the main issue. The main issue is controlling it. So as you go down, try and slow the movement and down. Now this, if you're doing a circuit or anything, it's probably not the time to do it. But generally, if you can work on your lunges just by slowing the movement,
Maybe.
working on having that control at the bottom. Because yeah, you're right, we don't want to be hitting our knees to the floor. We want to get as close as we can almost. But yeah, avoid. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, if you can't get very low on a lunge, is that a restriction in your knee or?
It depends. It depends. If you can get, for example, if you, I can set a TRX up here, but you can just use a wall or anything. I'll show you this wall actually. If you can take the pressure off, you can use sofas by either side of you. If you can physically get into this position, then it's most likely nothing restricting you in terms of your mobility or anything. What it could be is technique or strength in the knee. So if that's the case, if it is the strength of the knee, you just need to kind of improve your exercises first. Again, lunges aren't exactly the easiest exercise to do. So there's other exercises we can do, such as small step-ups, like so, where we're building up that strength. Like we just spoke about with the reverse lunge, you may be able to do that movement there, no problem. If I ask you to put into this position, this muscle working 10 times more. So that may be the issue. Why? Maybe due to the strength of the leg, which just needs possibly building up. It's hard to say without obviously seeing you do it and stuff. So if you wanted to go over it properly, we can do that if you want to message me or something like that. But generally, it being restricted in your movement, unless you've got an injury, it's most likely to do with strength and control of the muscle group, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Cool. Cool. Any other questions? It doesn't have to be about lunges either. If you've got any questions at all.
climbers, did somebody ask about?
That was me, yeah. I always struggle with mountain climbers. You know, I try and keep my core as engaged as possible, but it always ends up hurting my back. And it's the same with plank as well.
Same with plank, yeah? Cool.
Yeah.
So, in terms of this, it depends on whether it's the full plank that's causing it or not. So, what I recommend starting with is like being in those press-ups. If I get into a plank like so, whether I'm on my hands or on my forearms, I've got those hips tucked up. So if anything, you'd argue that I'm in a rounded hollow position rather than a flat or arched position. So start here, and I can feel my core on, even though it's not, I could hold it for a long time. I know my core's working. So if you can hold that position first, does that hurt your back? The most common thing is that we lose that arch due to loads of reasons like tight hamstrings and stuff that causes us to arch the back. So by being in this position, it puts a lot of body weight and stress on the body already. So being able to tuck up those hips is very difficult. So first of all, I recommend seeing if you can tuck the hips when you're in this position. If you can without any pain on the back, then it suggests that we need to work on the strength of your ability to hold those hips tucked under and engage the core. Because all that tends to happen is in a plank or a mountain climber is we put a lot of pressure on this back. The other thing it could be, if it's happening with a mountain climber, if it's on the outward phase, then it's like, if it's on the inward phase, then maybe we've got a tight lower spine, or not necessarily sciatica, but something that leads on to sciatica, where if you'll bring that knee under and it's rounding and then it's kind of pinching, then you may be trapping something in the lower back, still to do with your ability to stretch the hamstrings and engage the glutes. But if it's on that inward knee phase, then it could be something slightly different.
You know, it's just constant.
Yeah. But if I test out those knee down planks first and see how that feels, and then build up from there, really.
Okay. I think I know where I'm going. I think it's because I try and sort of overcompensate with not having my hips up too high. I think I'm keeping them too low.
Yeah, exactly that. We see it turn. So if I show you as best I can with the tight top. So obviously people put their bum up like so. As soon as you sink your hips too low, there's that arch, there's that natural arch here that comes in. And as soon as we bring that in, our lower spine, the lumbar spine, takes all the weight, like a bridge would in the middle of a bridge. So yeah, if you can take, the best thing is to kind of, you don't want your bum, when someone tells you to bring your bum down, you want to just try and bring it level and tuck the hips up. Think about tucking the hips up to your chest, like so. See if that helps. If it doesn't, let me know.
And
anything else?
in mountain climbers, do you need to do long strides or short? Does it matter? I tend to nearly run on the spot, if you understand.
Depends on the coach, depends on the workout as well. For example, if it was a race or a competition, or you just want to do as many reps as you can in a certain amount of time, then doing reps like this, there's nothing wrong. As long as this initial plan position is fine.
Yeah, that's what I do.
So it's going to get you 10 times more reps.
Yeah, that's what I do.
So if you want to do that in some situations, by all means, if it, like I say, if you're trying to get as many reps as you can, or it's a race, if you want to improve strength, if you're training the core, then we want to take it slower. Like a plank, the slower we take the movement, the harder it works. It's the same as any exercise. If I do a slow press up, it builds up strength more. So by doing a slow mountain climber all the way in and back, you're just going to be building up that plank strength and the lower core strength. So there's not a right or wrong. Is why when I coach, I always just differentiate between the two and say, I'm looking for slow ones today.
Yeah.
Or it's a race, so feel free to do the sprinting ones. So there's no right or wrong there, really. It's just kind of what your goal is.
Yeah. Or the training days.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anything at all?
Can you send us some movements to practice the deadlift? Because I just can't do it. So anything that I can do to practice that, that would be great.
Yeah. So I actually did a 20-minute video on Facebook on last Friday about the hip hinge. So it's a 20-minute run through. So I can send you a link to that. It's on YouTube. I'm doing another one tomorrow morning about the deadlift totally as well. So I do that 8 a.m. every morning on my Facebook page, and then it'll be on YouTube and stuff. So I can send that over to you, and you can use that. If that's all right.
Great, thank you. That'd be
Cool, perfect. So I'll put that. I'll send you that over, Hannah. But yeah, anything else?
No.
great.
Cool, everyone's good, nice. So yeah, if you do have any other issues with exercises, obviously just drop them over, let me know. But otherwise, let us know what kind of other things you want in these masterclasses. And yeah, I hope you got something out of today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, have a nice day, and I'll see you all for our next session tomorrow night. I'm back tomorrow evening.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cheers, Rach.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Have a nice day. See you later.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.